Hello and welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Kaylee and I use this channel to talk about and document different ways that I am building an intentional life. My hope is that if you follow along for the journey, you might pick up some tips and tricks too of ways to bring more intentionality into your everyday life. Something that is actually a new thing for me this year that I have found super supportive and helpful and actually was spurred on by trying to think of content ideas initially was reflecting on the previous quarter and kind of looking ahead intentionally into the next quarter. And we are in the final 3 months of 2025, which I have a hard time coming to grips with. But we are in the last 3 months of the year. And so this quarterly reflection and reset feels especially important, special, monumental. I don't know, it feels different. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's look back at July, August, and September. One reason that I have found this incredibly supportive is because I am not a huge journaler. I really wish I was, but specifically taking the time to pause is what I find to be most beneficial for my ability to reflect and reset. I have actually not yet done my own reflecting. Therefore, I'm going to be doing a little bit of that as I film this video, but I'm going to do a lot of it off camera to really give the time and space it deserves from me, or this will have been just to record a video and not actually at all beneficial for myself. If you've watched any of my other quarterly updates, I have been a lot more chatty about the things that I have reflected on and that I am implementing for the next quarter, the next 3 months. For this one though, I'm going to focus a lot on the prompts that kind of get me to that place. I will still share a little bit here and there, but for the most part, we're going to focus on the prompts. So feel free after a specific prompt to pause the video and respond, reflect, write down, journal, and then come back to the video for the next prompt, and so on and so forth. This is something that I like to do every 3 months, but I am sure that there are people who would love to do this every month, and these are definitely check-in questions and prompts that you could revisit every single month if that feels more supportive to you. That's enough for me. Let's reflect. The first thing that I like to do is think about 3 words that either describe how I felt over the last 3 months or just 3 words that describe the last 3 months, or a combination of both. The goal here is to 1, see if you can connect to the feelings that you experienced. I personally am a suppressor of feelings, and so I have to be really intentional about checking in and making sure that I am connecting to my feeling my feeling, and not just putting it in a box somewhere and setting it aside. So 3 words of how I felt is really aligned with what I need out of this. This is a bit of a general prompt and question. In the looking ahead, I'm going to specifically break down the 7 dimensions of wellness that I like to check in on during this time. And so sometimes I utilize what I wrote down for the previous quarter to answer this, but it also can just be answered in any way that feels good to you. And that is what went well and what didn't go well. I also like to think about what hobbies or rituals and routines that supported me over the last 3 months. Was it a specific time of morning to wake up? Was there a specific meal that made me feel really energized? Was there a game or show or book that made me feel really supported or really connected? So what things did you implement that were supportive to you over the last 3 months? And then I love this one, things that you are proud of that you did or that you accomplished. The reason that I like this one is because it doesn't have to be anything big. Small accomplishments, small tasks that you've been putting off for a really long time that you did in the last 3 months deserve being celebrated just as much as a huge accomplishment. One of the things that I'm very proud of myself for doing in the past 3 months is washing my makeup brushes. Gosh, I can't tell you the last time I washed them. I'll be very honest with you. I don't remember. But I did it at the end of September, and I had been thinking about it probably for at least 2, if not 3 months, and I actually did it. And I'm going to pat myself on the back because that is something worth being proud of, especially when it was getting put off for so long. But there are also big accomplishments that we did in the last 3 months. Jonathan passed his BCBA certification. That was huge. We paid off all of our debt, which is massive. But if you don't have any of those big accomplishments, it doesn't mean that you didn't use your time well or that you're a failure or anything like that. Maybe you had 30 small accomplishments that you did and completed versus 1 or 2 big things. Those deserve to be celebrated too, because if we don't celebrate the small wins, we will lose all hope and we will be so discouraged, and it actually prevents us from being able to hit our big wins or to be as excited about them as we could and should be when we complete them. So celebrate the small things as well. If you set any goals or intentions, even at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of the past 3 months, check in on them. Did you follow through? How did it feel to follow through if you did? Do some of them need to be revisited and added to the next 3 months? Do they not align with you anymore and actually just need to be tabled? Checking in on things that we set an intention for at the beginning of the year or at the beginning of the previous quarter. It's a good time to check in on those things instead of just reflecting and setting new goals for the next 3 months, because it's also really important to check in on the things that even you promised just yourself. Building self-trust is a real thing, and you can build self-trust by setting goals and completing the goals, even if the only person that it affects is you, and even if that effect is really minuscule in comparison to some other things that you might need to do or other expectations on you externally. That's kind of it for the reflection. Typically, that brings up quite a lot for me, so I hope that you paused and took the time or wrote down the prompts and will take the time to really dig into those questions. A lot of times, both in looking at the past 3 months and looking ahead at the next 3 months, I find myself getting stuck on just the previous month, so September in this case, or just the upcoming month, which is October in this case. Try to make sure that you're really expanding and even doing it month by month, if that feels helpful, and just doing kind of a smaller reflection in each of the months to make sure that you're connecting to what took place over the entire time versus just a short period of time that might be more accessible memory-wise. The same thing in looking ahead. It's going to be really easy right now to think about all of the things that I want to do and feel in October, but I also have to remember that November and December are also in the next quarter. We have 3 major US holidays that happen in these 3 months: Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas. And so also thinking about those things, thinking about the holiday parties that we might need to attend, the additional social things that will be happening, potentially seeing and interacting with more family. I also have the wedding of my brother in November. So there are a lot of things coming up, and it's important to make sure to take the time to kind of sift through each and every month to make sure that you're getting a bird's eye view of the entire time versus focusing on the immediate future. So similar to the first prompt in the reflection, my first prompt in the resetting and kind of looking ahead is, what do I want to feel? And this, I do want you to use feeling words or feeling descriptors at least. And the reason for that is because if we set an intention to feel a certain way, we might be more inclined, and our brain and thought processes might be more inclined to do things or cultivate space where those feelings get to be felt. So for instance, 2 of my words, I haven't chosen my third one yet, but 2 of my words are gezellig, which is a Dutch word. It's actually tattooed on my body. And the second one is wonder / like childlike joy. The first, gezellig, which kind of the direct translation is cozy, but it's so much more than just cozy. And it's not necessarily something that you can make happen. It does happen. Things are gezellig when you're with people that mean a lot to you, when you're sharing a really good meal or playing a game together or reading next to each other in silence. You can also feel it when you're alone because of the environment around you and the feeling of the space, not necessarily what's in the space. So you can't just light a candle and grab a blanket and it be gezellig. Like, there's a feeling, and when you have felt it, you know it. Like, you just know. And I'm choosing this one specifically because my people in the Netherlands, who we saw in May of this year, I am typically there this time of year. I'm typically there in October, November, or December, or all 3 of those months, or 2 of those months. And this year I won't be. And that's really hard for me. I was thinking about it earlier today and got quite emotional. So it's something that I want to remind myself I am capable of feeling here in America, but also just with the people that I have in my life here. So I want to be intentional about that, as intentional as I can be. And then wonder or childlike joy. There are just so many good memories that I have in this season in my childhood. And so I want to reconnect to some of those things. Whatever that means. I don't know what it means yet or what it looks like yet in practice, but I would like to experience that if it's possible. And so I'm making the of how I want to feel so that hopefully it is possible. And like I said, I haven't figured out my third word, but I'm going to sit and reflect and think about it off camera. So then once you've picked how you want to feel, what are some things you want to do? And are there any non-negotiables? A non-negotiable could be going to see Christmas lights in December. A non-negotiable could be booking a dentist appointment because you haven't been in a while. So it doesn't necessarily have to be experiences or anything really big or special. It could just be something that you need to get done because it's been a minute since it was done or since you did it. A nice secondary kind of plan for this is to give yourself a deadline if that doesn't feel stressful. I like to give myself deadlines, and I know that I can just move the deadline because it's a deadline that I gave to myself, but it does help to have something on the calendar just so that I'm seeing it frequently enough to know that, oh yeah, that's coming up, or oh yeah, I did want to complete that by this time. It can be really helpful and supportive, and other times it can be really stress inducing. And if it's going to be that, don't do it. You could also kind of format a plan of action if it's a really big task or a task that you find very daunting, to give yourself kind of a step-by-step or breaking it down into smaller tasks over a longer amount of time versus trying to do it all in one day. Something like that, if you kind of start building a plan now, that can be very helpful. Kind of in the same vein, checking your calendar and seeing what's already planned, what are you excited about, what might you be dreading, where might you need some additional support in a month period of time, and kind of starting to plan for what that support might look like. For me, sometimes the support looks like making sure that I know I need to meal plan on a Sunday because I have a really busy client week coming up. Sometimes that looks like asking my partner for additional support because I know that I'm not going to be able to do it myself. Just trying to set yourself up for success for the things that you already know are on your calendar, so that as things start to pop up and your calendar starts to fill throughout the 3 months, you already have some support systems in place for yourself, either internally or externally. Then we have the 7 dimensions of wellness. There are actually 8, but the 8th one is financial, and I'm going to do a specific finance video. So if you want to do 8 dimensions of wellness in this reflection, you can add financial to the list I'm about to give you. I do that fully separately because it feels really separate to what I reflect on and plan for through these prompts. The 7 dimensions of wellness that I focus on in these prompts are social or relational, emotional, physical, spiritual and or creative, intellectual, occupational, and environmental. For social, I put and relational or relational. It's totally up to you. Sometimes I do both. Sometimes I do one or the other. Completely up to you. For spiritual, some other people that I know choose creative for this if spiritual doesn't feel aligned with the goals that they set for themselves and the intentions they set. And then for environmental, think about more immediate environment versus the environment at large. I like to do 1 or 2 for my immediate environment and maybe 1 for the environment at large, but you can keep the focus on just your immediate environment if that feels easier or more supportive to you. But what do I do with these 7 dimensions of wellness? I'm so glad you asked. I choose 1 or 2 optimistic but realistic goals for each of these categories. What does optimistic but realistic mean? That means it's not something that I can complete in 5 minutes, or it's not something that can be completed by the end of the week, typically, but it is something that could be attained over the course of 3 months, or a habit that I could start to implement over the course of 3 months. It is not something that should have to take a year that I'm trying to put into 3 months. So it's realistic, but it's also optimistic. And I choose 1 to 2 goals per category. I like to both write these and put them digitally somewhere so that I can revisit them. I do kind of check in on them throughout the month. I am just realizing now that I don't think I have thought about my goals that I set from the past 3 months since I set them, because the past 3 months were such a whirlwind of a time for various different reasons. So I'm going to make sure that I do my best. It's not a have to, it's a want to. I want to do my best in checking in with them a little bit more frequently than I realize I did over the past 3 months. And that's another good reason to do something like this, because even though I did this 3 months ago, it's something that I now need to revisit because the last 3 months got so hectic that everything that I may have had planned kind of went out the window, and then I forgot to check in on them again. So this reflection and check-in is very important. You'll also see that as a theme when I talk about my finances, because that is true for that too. That's enough for me. I hope these prompts were helpful. Like I said, I hope that you may have paused and gone and reflected or responded to them and then come back to the video, or if not, that you were able to write them down. I'll also leave it in the description below, each of the questions, so that if you want to revisit it over time, you can do that as well. I will see you soon to talk through all of the books that I read in the last 3 months. What a weird mix of books it was. Until next time.